this concept is very, very, very offensive to a lot of people. It's offensive to a lot of people on the right side of the political aisle, because those people don't like the concept of evolution and natural selection. And it's very controversial and offensive to people on the left side of the aisle because it describes innate gender differences.
Whoa.
You with me? So evolutionary psychology is hated by both sides of the aisle because it's true, and it's probably the most true and testable form of psychology that there is, which is why the reason we talk about it all the time on the show. And we have a lady here who's a PhD, who she's going to describe what she thinks of evolutionary psychology.
Okay, I have to call BS on generally things called evolutionary psychology, because most of what's called that is just backwards rationalizing beliefs people have that are usually based in patriarchal, sexist, and racist ideas and understandings. For example, the idea that women are just biologically more suited to being in the home and taking care of the children, and therefore they should do the things that they're more biologically and their brains are different. They're designed more for those things. If we lived in a feminine version of patriarchy, and I'm not going to say matriarchy because matriarchies haven't tended to work like patriarchy does, but let's say it was like a patriarchy but with women in charge, then the logic would go something like this. Men are physically stronger, which is how we know that they're suited to manual labor instead of intellectual labor. Women, having less muscle, they spend that energy instead on brain. So they're more intellectual, they're smarter, they're better at, executive tasks. Men are really designed to be the lower class and to be used as physical labor.
She's weird.
It's absolutely equally bullshit in either direction. But what happens is the dominant power system rationalizes backwards the inevitability of its power in order to justify the way it subjugates other people. So anytime you hear things couched in these terms, like it's just sort of how we're built evolutionarily because women had to stay and have one partner to find a protector for the babies, but men spread their seed. There's a whole other story which some researchers have come up with that's exactly the opposite. And there's some indication with cave people, I don't remember what the evidence is, but basically that the females would have sex with as many men as possible because no man would know which babies was his. So she would get the protection of the most men by having the most men having had sex with her and maybe thinking the babies are his. Right, so this is like, you can tell the story 1,000 different ways, and none of this is actually proven evolutionarily or otherwise. So evolutionary psychology is usually just BS rationalization. Don't buy into it, and definitely don't spout it.
She has a better fade than most men.
For sure. So let's go over a couple things.
That's the girl from the first video you showed me.
Let's go over a couple things.
That's the girlfriend, isn't it?
Number one, her part about women wanting multiple sexual partners, that comes from a book called Sex at Dawn, which has been totally debunked. Nothing in that book is based in science whatsoever. Number two, she said, because women were like this, then they should. Do you want to know what they never talk about in evolutionary psychology?
Should.
Ever. They never say you should do shit. They talk about the fact that murder oftentimes comes from men having jealousy against other men over having sex with their female partner.
Right.
That doesn't mean they should. By saying what she's saying, it is tantamount to me being an oncologist, telling someone they have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and then you being like, why are you attacking this person? No, I am stating a fact. There's a difference between normative and descriptive. What evolutionary psychology is, it is a description of the innate differences between men and women. Evolutionary psychology when it comes to dating, and when it comes to mating. And by the way, Lita Cosmides and Cindy Meston are female evolutionary psychologists who apparently are promoting the same patriarchal idea. Nothing she said is true. Easily debunked. And I invite her, come on my show, and we will go step by step. The last one, they talk about things and they're not provable. Not provable. There was a 37 culture study in 1989. They took 37 cultures that had nothing to do with each other, no radio, television, or film, and they found in all these cultures, men were more interested in casual sex than women. Crazy. Women tended to want men who were taller than them. Women were more interested in resource acquisition in all of these cultures than women were. And remember, these people who live in the Andes and these people who live in whatever, Iraq. They have nothing to do with each other. But they still found the same things. Men all wanted a 0.72 hip to waist ratio. Does anyone want to guess what the most fertile hip to waist ratio is? It's the one that men wanted. And when they had blind men who had no cultural adaptation or whatever, meaning like they'd never seen a fat person or a skinny person, they would haptically have them describe the perfect hip to waist ratio, and it was still 0.72, so she is incorrect. It has been proven. It is the hardest psychology that there is. There is so much testicle proof. There's evolutionary psychology talks about a parental investment hypothesis, which in every two gender species, the gender that has the most to lose or has the most to invest in the child is the more pickier of the two genders. We don't see it. It is a completely falsifiable theory, and it has never been falsified. Does that make sense?
She's still stuck in her intersectional
She
feminism.
even said at one point, she said something about the dominant species, and I was like, well, you just basically said right before, you said the one, she never stated who in her mindset was the dominant.
Well, obviously she means men. She's talking about a patriarchy.
Yeah. Let me see if I can debunk this really quickly. You don't even need evolutionary psychology to debunk everything she said. You need evolutionary biology.
Sure.
Because
you just need common
here we go.
sense.
Sex differences that suggest men were designed or evolved for combat. Greater upper body strength, taller bodies, heavier bodies, higher basal metabolic rate, faster reaction times, thicker bones in the jaw, so you can take it on the
These
chin.
are not theories. These are things we can see.
These are provable facts.
These are provable facts.
Faster mental rotation of spatial visualization, more accurate throwing of objects, more accurate blocking of thrown objects, more interest in practice of combat skills, stronger bones, greater density or bone density, specifically in the arms, easier heat dissipation, more hemoglobin in the blood, higher muscle to fat ratio, larger hearts, higher systolic blood pressure, broader shoulders enabling efficient weapon use, larger sweat capacity, larger circulating blood volume, greater resistance to dehydration, tolerance for risk and dangerous activities, faster sensory frame shifting, thicker skin, larger lung capacity, and greater use of physical and homicidal aggression. All biological facts.
So are they designed
now?
Twice a week.
No one is saying they're designed for manual labor. They're designed to kill.
Okay,
that's what it is.
But here's the issue: when she said in her patriarchy that was for women, she said, well, obviously because men were more physically strong, then they were due for labor, and that women were for more executive jobs. So the way you would test that, you would be able to find that women had higher IQs than men, and they don't.
No.
So again, what she's saying is like the way it's a straw man argument. She's saying evolutionary psychology is not based in any reality, and then so we show the reality, and then so now she comes up with her own fairy tale reality to try to debunk it. It's called a straw man argument. What she's saying is not accurate whatsoever. Easily disprovable.
Well, Gadsad also calls it just so thinking, meaning like it's just like, well, you figure something out, and so you try to sort of backwards engineer it.
That's
to
what she did. She
sister,
backward engineered.
She's doing exactly the same.
She's doing exactly what she's accusing people of doing.
Right.
Again, if we go back and we say, well, men are stronger and women are able to carry children, it's like, well, you're backwards rationalizing it, and it's like, well, we can see,
facts.
Yeah, but we can see how evolution works. We can actually watch evolution in small, like single cell organisms. We know that natural selection is a real thing. And so we just understand that it happened for humans. We found the bones of Homo habilis, Homo australis. We found the bones of Homo neanderthalis. We know that we came from other form of hominids. And before that, we found the bones of Australopithecus, which was the ancestors for Homo sapiens. And before that was the common ancestor between apes and human beings. And so when you come to that realization, the evidence is here for this. The idea, what she's saying innately, is that evolution only counted for the neck below and does not count for the brain. Because the brain, what it must do in order for this species to survive, remember guys, there's no internet, you can't buy a Glock, you know what I'm saying? There's no antibiotics, any of that stuff. That we are living in a very, very austere environment for the first 100,000 years of Homo sapien existence. And in those cases, you would have defined gender roles because survival would be easier in that case, right?
It's division of labor is what it comes
It doesn't mean there has to be, and no one in evolutionary psychology ever says You should do this. If you want to be a bad bitch and fucking make millions of dollars, there's no text in evolutionary psychology that says that you can't do that. But it can describe what we did. Evolutionary psychology is a description of what is and not what ought.
You know,
and so that's the difference.
Is Bree brought this up earlier about how there is sort of the masculine and then there's the feminine, right? Then those are just sort of like innate, like conventional, like understandings that we have as human beings, right? The thing is you're 100% correct. We are better together than we are apart, number one. And number two is that men and women are innate complements to one another. Here we go again. I don't need evolutionary psychology to prove her wrong. All I have to do is have fMRI scans that show the synapses between men's brains and women's brains. And when you lay them on top of each other, they're the perfect complement. Women tend to be more focused on communication. They tend to have larger vocabularies. They tend to like text more. They tend to enjoy conversation more, whereas men are more. Women are interested in people, and men are interested in things, more or less. And if you take those two brain scans and you put them on top of each other, they perfectly complement each other when they come together. Thus, you have the masculine and you have the feminine that are an innate, evolved firmware that we have in our brains. Whether you decide that you want to go against that and condition yourself against that, that's up to you behaviorally. If you want to operant conditioning, whatever it is that you think you can think of a better way, probably not. But if that's what you want to do, it's not that you can't do that. It's just that this is the hardware that you have to work with. And so even if we're going to talk about like evolutionary psychology, I don't think that it's real or whatever, fine. But here's the scans. Here's the brain scans. Here we've plotted the human genome since what, 2001 right now.
Yeah.
And we're still figuring more shit out as far as like genealogy and like you could do 23andMe right now, so you find out where you came from, all this stuff. Everything that is now, honestly, I think what's going to prove people like this wrong is not necessarily going to be evolutionary psychology per se. It's going to be evolutionary biology that locks in with evolutionary psychology.
The biology. So
we're innate complements to one another.
I saw I think he's a TikToker, and he was in Morocco, and he was asking people, what do you think about, like, it was gender equalities or something to do with male and female, and he didn't understand the concept of
what is a woman.
It was what is a man and what is a woman.
It was Matt Walsh, yeah.
And everyone in Morocco said, well, I'm a man, she's a woman. They didn't understand the concept of us saying, well, I'm a whatever. I don't identify as a woman. And in other cultures, this is only something that's going on in America. When you go and you travel abroad, you will see that no one has the forefrontal issues in society and politics like America. The things that are going on here are not going on in any other country. And when they ask people, what makes a man and what makes a woman, or are you a man, are you a woman, or do you identify as a man or a woman, or what are your pronouns? That's what the question was.
Yeah, right.
What are your pronouns?
Didn't understand the question.
They did not understand the question.
Yeah, because and fundamentally it comes back to this, is that we just have decided somewhere along the line that we are separating sex from gender. The social idea of whatever gender is, the behavioral manifestations of you being male or you being female, and that there is some sort of separation between those two. And we've been teaching this since like the mid-'70s. It is 100% disprovable bullshit, and has been so for I've been on this crusade to say, no, gender and sex are intimately linked. And the thing is the more you try to separate those things, that's how you get, what's a woman? I don't know. I'm gender confused. I'm transsexual. I'm an alien.
Let me say this also.
A boy, and I'm like, thank God I couldn't do that when I was that young. Like I was always a tomboy, and now it'd be like now kids that have done that, they're pushed. They want to take themselves out. You know, they're not healthy. There's so much coming out now finally where it's like, yeah, not even pushed. Like now they're doing this thing where they take kids away in school, right? Like they don't even give the adults any like oh no, like you can't tell your child not to do that. That's gonna hurt.
The
like,
child is raised by
and then like Washington and California now.
Yeah.
Like,
my kid tells me he wants to be a cat. I'm gonna be like, okay. Sit at the table.
So is it, I want to make a clear
When I
distinction
grow
here.
up, I want to be a dinosaur.
What,
Then you get out of my house and you go outside and sleep outside.
Let me make a clear distinction here. What you guys are talking about, the derivative conversation where we're talking about gender studies and body dysmorphia and stuff like that, or gender dysmorphia, I understand the discussion, but evolutionary psychology, I want to make sure this is absolutely clear. There is no prescription for anyone becoming or not becoming in evolutionary psychology. Absolutely none. Evolutionary psychology does not tell you what you should do. It tells you what you should do the same amount that mathematics tells you what you should do or astronomy tells you what you should do. These are descriptive sciences. And she has a problem with that because the conclusions that we come up with, or shouldn't say we, I'm not an evolutionary psychologist, but the conclusions that are derived from evolutionary psychology do not, and they provably do not, fall in line with her narrative. And her narrative is men and women are innately equal. It's just men, because they're stronger, have taken over and created a patriarchy, and none of the rest of it is true. Mentally, we're all exactly the same. And we know factually that that's just not the case. She didn't provide any evidence to support what she's saying, and I invite her, come on the show if you guys want to do that. But you're gonna tell me how you feel, and I'm going to continue to give you studies that you say don't exist.
Guarantee you, if she got good by the right guy one time, her whole
Fuck that
animals have like a male and a female.
Fuck
like
that attitude right out of you.
Exactly. Like, girl, calm down. You just get bent over one time.
Just one time.
Stop being so stuck up.